The two-part season finale of Andor is finally here. It's all led up to this. Episode 11, titled Daughter of Ferrix, follows a very well-received episode 10. One Way Out brought us Cassian, Melshi, and Kino, as well as the others, escaping the Narkina 5 prison, in some of the best Disney Plus era Star Wars yet. This week had a lot to follow up on, and although it was a little bit slower in pace, there is so much to discuss heading into the final episode next week. We find out what events will bring everyone back to Ferrix, and even had a highly anticipated sequence involving Luthen's lightsaber ship. With that in mind, Red Squadron, let's get into the episode 11 breakdown. As always, spoilers are ahead. We catch up with Cassian and Melshi, fresh out of prison. The pair are climbing up a cliff edge and Melshi is struggling. As they cling on, we get our first Easter egg in the form of a TIE Reaper, which flies overhead. TIE Reapers were troop carrier variants of the TIE lineup. The transport was designed specifically to carry elite troop variants to key points on a battlefield, such as Death Troopers. But what could this ship be doing? Not to get too dark, but it wouldn't surprise me if the Empire actually sent Death Troopers to wipe out everyone at the remaining Narkina prison facilities. Once word gets out from the escapees regarding what's going on there, the Empire might get some severe backlash. Otherwise, maybe they sent Reapers to transport the remaining prisoners to another facility, but knowing the Empire, that's probably thinking too optimistically. The TIE Reaper heads over the horizon as Cassian and Melshi continue their climb. We head over to Ferrix, where we learn that Cassian's mother, Marva Andor, has passed away. We saw her health decline over the last few episodes, and now she has passed off screen. No one seems to be taking things harder than her loyal droid, B2EMO. His scenes in this episode are so heartbreaking, especially when Brasso offers him to be alone to say goodbye to her body, and B2 simply says, "I don't want to be alone, I want to be with Marva." The Daughters of Ferrix, who we know Marva was a part of, need B's help with organizing something important, likely her funeral. Marva's body is brought outside as B watches from the window. Also observing from afar is this guy in the green jacket who we saw last week. Turns out it's ISB attendant Corv. Plus, Cinta is there as well. The two of them actually interact. Oh, how ironic. Back now to Cassian and Melshi, who are laying and observing a pair of aliens known as Caridians. One of them, named Psyched Ock, will eventually join Saw Gerrera's partisans and can be seen in Rogue One. He's one of few to actually survive the destruction of Jeddah City. Cassian and Melshi notice they have a ship, specifically a quad jumper. This is a ship which first appeared in The Force Awakens as Rey and Finn attempt to escape Jakku. The ship can also be seen briefly a couple of times in The Mandalorian. Quite a few little Easter eggs off the bat, you'll love to see it. Back to the plot though, Cassian and Melshi are plotting to steal the ship to escape off-world. They make a run for the quad jumper before being trapped in nets. Meanwhile, the ISB's Dedra Meero learns of Marva's passing and the Ferrix customs being planned for her funeral. Dedra tells the Imperials on Ferrix to allow the residents to proceed with their customs, but to keep things contained, then stand back and watch. We also learn that after someone passes on Ferrix, their ashes are mixed with mortar and then turned into a block of brick. Interesting custom, to say the least. Our captured Cassian and Melshi talk with their new captors, eventually being released and talking their way into a ride back to Niamos, where Cassian was originally captured and taken to Narkina 5. They take off in the quad jumper and we see just how sketchy this ship is. It barely got off the damn ground. For the first time this week, we jump over to Coruscant with Kleya at Luthen's shop. Vel shows up at the door looking to talk with Luthen, who is off-world. We'll get to him and probably the highlight of episode 11 shortly, stay tuned. The two clash back and forth a bit, giving us some more insight into their rebel operation. Vel says she gave Luthen Aldani, asking Kleya what she's done lately. Kleya snaps back with the fact that she doesn't have lately, she has always. In one of the best lines of the episode, Kleya says, quote, "I have a constant blur of plates spinning and knives on the floor, and needy panicked faces at the window, of which you are one but many." I'm not the first person who said this, but Kleya gives off major Leia vibes. The similarities in their names can't be sheer coincidence. Vel informs Kleya of Marva's passing and says she'll be returning to Cinta's side to complete their mission of tying up the loose end that is Cassian Andor. This particular shot also gave us a couple of Easter eggs. Luthen's shop really is the gift that keeps on giving. On the right here, we have a Wookiee battle shield, as seen on Kashyyyk in Revenge of the Sith. On the left, we see what looks to be pieces of stone, similar to the door of the World Between Worlds, as seen in Star Wars Rebels. This in turn also referencing the Mortis Arc from the Clone Wars. Back on Ferrix, Brasso arrives back with B2, although B doesn't want to go back to Brasso's place, convincing him to stay at the Andor homestead for just one more night. Elsewhere in the city, Bix Colleen is absolutely traumatized by the torture she was put through 2 episodes ago. She's being watched by a camera that looks identical to those Luke, Han, and Chewie shot out on the Death Star. Bix is brought before the Ferrix Imperial officers and is shown a hologram of Anto Kreegyr. This is the first time we're seeing the face of the man we've heard so much about over the last several episodes. The Imperials want to know if Anto is the man that Bix introduced to Cassian. In the Empire's eyes, Axis, but in reality, we know that was in fact Luthen. We don't see Bix give an answer either way. Will she be honest after all she's been through, or lie to protect both Cassian and Luthen? Over to Coruscant again, this time with Vel and Mon Mothma. Mon's daughter Lita is participating in an old Chandrillan custom, one which neither Mon or Perrin had any influence over, a tradition involving arranged marriage. Mon explains her entire situation to Vel, the money she's been trying to hide from the Empire, Tay Kolma's involvement, and Davos Skulden's proposal last week, which she just might end up accepting in episode 12. After an absence last week, Cyril Karn is woken up in his bedroom. He's received a call from Mosk, aka Sergeant Scotland, from way back in episode 3. He tells Cyril through a very spotty connection that he's still working on Morlana 1 and has heard Cassian Andor's mother passed away and a funeral is being planned. Before the call cuts out, we now return to Niamos and the hotel room which Cassian Andor was staying in when he was arrested. Cassian recovers his crate that was stashed above the shower, containing a solid amount of credits, 2 blasters, and Nemik's manifesto. I'm glad to see it safe. We now catch up with Luthen, who's arrived at Saw Gerrera's partisan camp. He's greeted by 2 tubes, Saw's right-hand man from Rogue One and a few episodes ago. They pat Luthen down and inspect his extendable walking stick. Plenty of people are speculating that this was actually a lightsaber hilt and that Luthen could be a former Jedi, but I highly doubt that's the case. We get a wide shot of the 2 X-Wings, just like a few episodes back, as Luthen meets with Saw. Now Saw has actually changed his mind since the last time Luthen checked up on him. He wants in on Kreegyr's attack on the Imperial Power Station at Spellhouse. That's before Luthen tells him no, because the ISB knows of Kreegyr's plan. They'll be walking into a trap. Saw accuses Luthen of being ISB, before Luthen reassures him by bringing up the fact that he's telling Saw not to go. Saw puts together that Luthen has an inside man at the ISB who's worth more than Kreegyr, and begins to realize the true extent of Luthen's network of sources and spies. Luthen even jokingly outs 2 tubes as a spy of his. To be clear, he isn't, but it was just a lighthearted moment. Luthen explains that when Kreegyr and his men go down, the ISB will feel invincible and they'll have a clear field to play. If they call things off, the ISB will be all the more suspicious. We then get this line from the trailer.
For the greater good, call it what you will. Let's call it war.
Over to Coruscant briefly, Cyril watches his mother leave before heading into their apartment and stealing something from the safe. It's hard to tell what it is, money, identification, something else entirely. He's definitely Ferrix bound next week. Up in orbit in his ship now, Luthen talks to Kleya, disguising their conversation to be about a collector's item for his shop. That's when Luthen's ship is approached by an Imperial Cantwell-Class arrestor cruiser. This ship was originally designed by Colin Cantwell for A New Hope, before being named after the artist and recycled in 2018. Several of the ship's original design elements, most notably the dishes, also influenced the design of the Death Star. The Imperial ship informs Luthen they're aware of partisan activity in the area. Could they already know about Saw Gerrera's base of operations? They want to scan Luthen's transponder, which he disguises to make his ship come up as one from Alderaan. The Imperials place Luthen in a tractor beam, deciding to at least use him as practice for the men to board. This is where we see the true power of Luthen's Fondor Hallcraft ship. He deploys a countermeasure which launches pieces of shrapnel into the tractor beam. As the beam grabs onto the shards and pulls them in, it effectively destroys itself, hurling tiny projectiles into the satellite dish. In response, TIE fighters are launched and begin their pursuit. Luthen moves in, demonstrating some stellar piloting skills. Now for the moment we've all been waiting for, dating back to a TV spot shown prior to episodes 1 to 3 even premiering, the lightsaber ship. Luthen activates 2 laser beams on either side of the ship before slicing through 2 TIE fighters and jumping to lightspeed. Could this ship actually be powered by a massive kyber crystal like we saw in Rebels? The obvious Jedi connections have been made already with Luthen. He does own a small crystal of his own, but if we think back to episode 3, Cassian was even puzzled by what was powering the Fondor. Kyber seems to be the logical answer. Cassian attempts to contact home and get a message to his mother before learning of her death. Cassian is obviously pretty distraught, but has to force it down as Melshi approaches. Melshi recommends they split up in order for them to get the word out of what happened on Narkina 5. Cassian gives him his extra blaster, and the 2 part ways. They'll undoubtedly reunite in Season 2 before both becoming members of the Rebel Alliance. Our second to last episode closes out with a beautiful parallel to Rogue One. Cassian stares across the water at a sunset, just as he and Jyn Erso would stare moments before dying due to the Death Star on Scarif. Maybe in his final moments of life, Cassian thought back to the day of his mother's passing, hoping he had made her proud. And that does it for Andor episode 11. It's hard to believe there's only one left to round out the season. While this week may have been a little bit slower, especially in comparison to One Way Out, I think it did a nice job of getting everyone to where they need to be for next week. Whatever ends up going down on Ferrix in episode 12 is gonna be crazy. We'll probably also find out what happens next for Mon Mothma and hear about Krieger walking right into a trap. Surely they'll end with some sort of a cliffhanger or big moment to generate some buzz for season 2, with production supposedly already underway. But what are you hoping to see in the finale next week? Let us know in the comments below. I'm still really hoping for Krennic or K2SO, but I'm not holding my breath. As always, thank you so much for watching and may the Force be with you. Red 5 standing by.